Dear colleagues and friends, good morning. Welcome to the second day of our conference. It is a pleasure to see so many of you here again, ready to continue our discussions, exchange ideas, and deepen our understanding of European company law and corporate governance. Yesterday, we witnessed inspiring presentation, fruitful and valuable debates, questions, and today promises to be equally engaging as we delve further into the critical issues shaping our field and, of course, explore innovative solutions to the challenges we face. We are honored to have a great number of speakers in 3 sessions and look forward to their insights and contributions. I encourage you to take full advantage of the sessions and discussions scheduled today, and of course to share your perspectives and expertise openly. Once again, thank you for your participation and commitment, and let us make this day as productive and inspiring as the last. Today, the moderator will be our dear colleague, Anton Bilic, from the University of Zagreb, Faculty of Law, Department of Company and Commercial Law. So, Anton, welcome and thank you for jumping in this role. I wish you all an excellent and stimulating day ahead. Please, Anton, floor is yours.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Professor Horak, thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'm really glad to be here once again, and I look forward to moderating this promising session. So, I've been told that actually one of the announced participants will be missing, specifically Ms. Hashchik. So maybe everyone will get a little bit extra minutes, but please don't overdo it, because I believe somehow that the most interesting part of conferences are questions and exchanging opinions. So I would like to reserve at least half an hour to have half an hour for a final discussion. I hope that there will be questions and answers. So yes, we'll try to be within the time limits. With that said, we will proceed as announced. The first session, as we have 3 co-authors, Dina Tomšić, Maja Janković, and Sanja Tishma. And the topic is very one in vogue, so to say, the evolution of sustainable development as a moderator of corporate governance practices, case of Croatia. So we have a combination of 2 really hot topics. One is corporate governance, the other is sustainability, and I look forward to hearing a little bit more about that. So please, floor is yours.
Okay, good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you, Professor Horak, and all of your team for the very inspiring conference. Yesterday, it was a great day, and hopefully we can continue in the same vein. I'll try to share my screen. Just a second, please. Do you see my presentation right now?
No, you had your screen shared, but you stopped it. So if you could please start over.
Okay, just a second. I'll try to do it again. Is it better now? Website will be able to see contents of your screen. Okay. Is it better now? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfectly. So Let me first introduce my colleagues. Director Sanja Tišma of the Institute of Research and Development from Croatia, and her assistant Maja Jankovic have done a lot of job for this let's say challenging topic. We were very curious about the situation in Croatia, about the forthcoming changes, and let's say the topic that we have chosen is dealing with augmented responsibility and connection with corporate governance practice in Croatia. So what we have in mind when suggesting this topic were that we would like to share some light on the level of national implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals measured by the UN reports for the 2023 and as well measured by the European Commission reports in the last 20 years. And therefore, we assume that we can maybe inspect the external communication of the companies that focuses on corporate governance practices and maybe to grasp some state of the sustainability level that is already implemented in the corporate governance practice in Croatia. Maybe the special highlight of our research, or maybe the special challenge, would be to shed some lighting on interconnection between sustainability development and corporate governance practice, and to sense the moderating effect of the sustainability within the corporate practice in Croatia. Just to comment a little bit about the context, about the business reality in Croatia, and along this topic, I can maybe match the worldwide context. So in corporate governance, there is always and still is being presented the conflict between short-term and long-term perspectives. So this is the topic of the boards as well as of the shareholders. And right now, this maybe a sustainable wave or augmented responsibility that is in front of the global companies globally and in Croatia, presented in the new directives that will be in enforcement in a few in a month, let's say in a month, CCRD in full capacity in a month, and this CS3D forthcoming. We consider that this wave of stakeholder governance would maybe crash into practice. Why? I'll show it lately in a few minutes. There is no established authority bodies still in Croatia to oversee the directive implementation and as well the reports. So this is only one challenge in this win. And the second challenge is probably that corporation, as well as here in Croatia, are not so familiar with collaborative strategies, and that maybe should be a solution for the problem. But first things first, let me show you the research model and the hypothesis. I understand that it's a little bit unexpected that we introduce the communication element into the field of corporate governance, but nevertheless, every strategy and every performance can only be in theoretically perfect if you don't communicate properly to one that is oriented to what you are aiming to, what's the purpose, and how you mean to perform the activity. So we have decided to shape a little model here that can help you in connecting global and EU sustainable development goals and its implementation from the perspective of changes in the regulation framework and the corporate practice in Croatia. And the final outcome or the final element of the process should be improved Croatian corporate governance practice. So our first hypothesis is Croatian sustainability practice moderately improved in the last 2 decades. That was the period that we collected the data. And hypothesis number 2 is that Croatian corporate governance practice moderately improved by the provision of the CSRD and forthcoming provision of the CSDDD directives. So let me show you the method and the sample. A research method that we selected was World Cloud. A word cloud is a visual representation of the word frequency derived from the written text and reveals the most prominent words associated with the context of research. This is kind of novelty in corporate governance world, and the main outcome of the implementation of the method from our research is the National Specific Sustainability Governance World Cloud. We have researched 100 Croatian companies, the biggest from the list of FINA, according to the incomes, according to the revenues. So this could be a quite relevant sample because those companies are the leader in the Croatian business and governance environment. And if they have some elements of the augmented responsibility, we can maybe derive the conclusion for all the Croatian governance environment for this moment. I have to mention that the research was conducted in August, from the 1st up till the end of the August. So these are data based on reports from 2023. So let's take a look at the dominant generic words that could be shaping the sustainability cloud. These are environment, employees, climate changes, anti-corruption, suppliers, and sustainability. So good news from this first insight could be that almost a half of the research companies are very aware about the sustainability issues and as well about the issue of environment protection. So that could be kind of good news, while other news are not so good as that one. Unfortunately, looking for the layers about sustainability, we have looking for the layers on the website about the sustainability, we have discovered only 8 companies that have some kind of reporting in a proper layer about sustainability, which is really not a good result. But other prominent words that are most specific to the sustainability governance word cloud related to some projects can be also found on the websites. And in this part of the inspection, we have noticed environment again, especially renewable energy sources projects, governance again, especially reporting, and sustainability, again, especially dealing with some elements of social issues and diversity. What is another maybe residual finding of our research is that in terms of reporting, companies pay a lot of attention already to the risk management reporting, and this is a good news for sustainability as well as for the corporate governance practice. Let me show you two graphs, and for the first I have to apologize because they are not translated in Croatian, but I will comment in English about that. These are the frequencies about specific words noticed in the inspection of the 100 web pages of the top Croatian companies. And the dominant topic is environment, as we already highlighted, governance as a second dominant topic, and then sustainability. The other topics are connected to diversity, society in total, climate changes, transparency, suppliers, and ESG. In minor terms, we have found repeating words integrity and human rights, but those maybe dominant topics can be selected from this table, and these are for the sure environment, governance, sustainability, diversity, and ESG topics. About the frequency of those, about the method of the word cloud, we have shaped according to the dominant five frequencies, dominant five words. We have shaped for the first time Croatian sustainability governance word cloud, and maybe this could be valid for 2024, since we are expecting great changes in 2025 due to the full enforcement of the CCRD directive and due to the first reports that should be obligatory prepared according to the law of accountant law in Croatia. So maybe our comments about the research can be that the most highlighted conclusion should be that the evolution of governance is a continuous journey that really requires a constant adaptation and openness to change. Corporate governance has stepped aside from its very firm and static kind of dashboard view toward a dynamic and agile practice, and corporate governance practice should be regarded as a very good tool for corporation for companies, not only for listed companies, but for companies at all, to help them gain resilience and as well as sustainability and sustainable competitiveness as well. Focus on long term is something that we have to do more about, but nevertheless, the research results show that the evolution of the sustainable development in Croatia is occurring dynamically, especially from the period of in the last 5 years. The report according to UN and the report according to Eurostat and CSI indexes are showing improvement for Croatia, but there are like 9 or let's say, half of the goals that we should meet betterly, because we are under the average of the European countries. And maybe my last comment is that we sense a lot of vibe that is going on here in Croatia about the implementation of the new directive. And a lot of unknown is still in front of the companies. As I already mentioned, there is debate about the body, the governance authority who should control the reports, whether it will be HANFA, which kind of came naturally, or another body. But aside of that, there's no doubt that transparency and better information about the company's activities, conduct, and as well plans will take really part in the next year. So our suggestion maybe for this problem is to open a clear communication about the purpose of the company, because this could serve as an umbrella term for all the other pillars of the sustainable governance. And we would also like to highlight once again collaborative strategies, not only competitive strategies, that can be a good framework for supporting the development of sustainability and the resilience of the company as well. Of course, be hoping that in this win, the quality of the corporate governance practice will be improved, and the sustainability issues will be highlighted more. That was a short, brave way to explain what we have found in our research. And of course, I'm open to your questions afterwards. And thank you very much for listening to us.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Tomšić. Very interesting presentation. Maybe a thought that occurs to me, but maybe for a later discussion, is can we measure some kind of correlation between all those nice sounding words and real life action? Does it really mean if companies mention certain words more that they will really enact it, or maybe it's just some kind of sustainability washing, what is also a topic, but that we will discuss maybe later on. Now it would be very nice to go further with sustainability, now sustainable finance, and we have Anne-Marie Weber and Stephen Park. I'm not sure that I pronounce it correctly, but you will excuse me. Presentation about corporate purpose in flux, the role for regulatory strategies in sustainable finance. Sounds very interesting, and I'm looking forward to hearing this. Please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope you can see the presentation. Yes, perfect. Okay, so I will be presenting today a joint research project I'm conducting with Stephen Park from the University of Connecticut. Due to the fact that it's around, I think, 3 a.m. In the US right now, and also Thanksgiving weekend, Stefan will not be joining me, but I'll do my best to coherently present this project. So, as the title already suggests, our research is trying to connect two important streams of academic discourse in the field of, let's say, sustainability and corporate governance. So these fields have so far largely been developing independently from each other. And these are, on the one hand, the discussion on corporate purpose, which is the centerpiece of the sustainable corporate governance debate, and on the other hand, the sustainable finance debate that was so far, of course, also explored by legal scholars, but we see far more empirical research and also by economists in this field. So the question of corporate purpose, or a broader, what role the corporation should take in our society, is obviously not a new question. It has been present both in the US and in the European discourse for many decades. However, the climate crisis, social inequalities, biodiversity loss, and pollution, so the main causes of our current state of planetary crisis, have certainly reignited the debate around this notion of corporate purpose, and led us to, led many scholars to re-explore whether corporate purpose could be or could serve as an entry point of sustainability into the realm of corporate governance. So during the last years, many different concepts around how corporate purpose could work in favor of sustainability have emerged. They all orbit around the notion that wealth maximization for shareholders cannot be the sole responsibility of the corporation, and thereby cannot be the sole responsibility of directors. So not going into detail at this point, we do this a little bit more in detail in the paper itself. But I think we can all agree that these diverging new concepts, they all converge on the ultimate goal, which is to foster sustainable decision-making that will ultimately lead to sustainable corporate conduct. So this is what we strive for. But we have detected several problems with what we call in the paper normative concepts of corporate purpose. That is, concepts that try to redefine corporate purpose, and by such redefinition, try to work out how corporate purpose could prescribe some sort of behavior to corporations, or more specifically to directors. So first problem with the normative approach to corporate purpose, or exploring corporate purpose in this prescriptive way, is that we have seen this most recently in the EU, when the Article 25 of the CSDDD failed to be integrated in the last and final version of the directive. There is a substantial pushback on legislative intervention when it comes to trying to define corporate purpose, or trying to indirectly define it through directors' duties as it was envisioned in the CSDDD. So we just see, and this is an empirical fact, that it's difficult to introduce these kinds of regulations into the framework of corporate law, be it in the member states or at a higher level at the EU level. Also, corporate purpose, the debate on corporate purpose is to a large extent also a debate on how to interpret the regulation that is already in place. So many of the EU member states in particular, they do not define corporate purpose specifically in their company law regulations. There's just a very general formula that needs to be interpreted, and we have found that, and this has also been voiced by many scholars before, that a certain interpretation of that term by doctrine and jurisprudence is very entrenched and has basically developed or turned into more of a social norm that is really difficult to eradicate. So the first problem in the approach of thinking about corporate purpose in a normative way is that we really, at this point in time, do not see many possibilities of changing that normative concept. And the second problem I would like to discuss a little bit broader is the problem of enforcing these normative conceptions of a corporate purpose. And this is what we in the paper identify as the corporate accountability gap. So we find that in order for corporate sustainability or sustainable decision-making to be really effective, there has to be some sort of accountability mechanism. And in fact, as corporate conduct is to a large extent determined by directors' decision-making, this accountability would need to be present at the level of directors. So directors would need to be held accountable. And in order for that to happen, we would need to have some effective means of enforcing directors' duties, which would be according to the concept of normative corporate purpose, which would be geared towards sustainable decision making. But the problem is that the current corporate governance frameworks that regulate and also the corporate law frameworks that regulate the enforcement of directors' duties, they are all based on conceptions of corporate purpose that mirror mostly the problems that are being raised by the agency theory. So the mechanisms of enforcing directors' duties in most of the member states that we've analyzed, and certainly in the US, they are frameworks through which the shareholders, as the principals, according to the agency theory, they are able to impose their will and enforce the duties of directors to protect the relationship that is present between agent and principal. So inserting ideas of sustainability that, as we have discussed also extensively yesterday, that encompass stakeholder interests, but not only stakeholder interests, but to keep it very simple, a broad variety of interests cannot be addressed through the standard frameworks of enforcing directors' duties. So the exploration of corporate purpose in the normative sense as an agent for sustainability would basically need to be accompanied by many other changes to the substantive corporate law that would somehow set up an appropriate enforcement mechanism, which would lift the problem of corporate purpose or sustainable corporate purpose from the sole normative definition to the level of enforcement itself. So we identify this also in the paper as the corporate accountability gap that emerges in the field of sustainable corporate purpose. So what we propose in the paper is to go back to that ultimate goal on which the new theories on corporate purpose converge, namely the fact that in the end, what we want to change is the conduct of the corporation, and what we want to tackle is sustainable decision making. And this is the point of departure for developing what we call in the paper applied corporate purpose, or the approach that focuses on applied corporate purpose. And we try to ask ourselves the question, if a change of definition of corporate purpose is problematic due to the reasons I have just delineated, is there any other possibility how we could, through law, obviously, because this is our field of research, how we could, through law, induce sustainability at the level of actually applying it and turning it into sustainable decision making. And obviously, there are many pathways that we could explore to that extent. How can we influence applied corporate purpose at the level of the decision making? But what we specifically do in this paper is to explore sustainable finance regulation. And here I want to emphasize that this is about sustainable finance regulation, not in general the, let's say, broader trend of sustainable finance that in particular in the economic literature is also a lot about voluntary and market mechanisms. So this is not what we are looking at. This is just, a different field. We are looking specifically at this question that you see here in the center of the slide, let's say, central question of our paper: how can we leverage sustainable finance regulation to induce sustainability at the level of applied corporate purpose, so at the level of the decision-making itself. And here we come to the part where we are trying to grab all those strings of these siloed research streams that I have mentioned in the beginning, because obviously, in particular in the European Union, we do already have some experiences with sustainable finance regulation. We do also have already some scholarship out there that delineates how sustainable finance regulation and the respective regulatory strategies work. What we are trying to do in the paper is pulling it together to show how these regulatory strategies may influence how corporate purpose is being applied at the level of the corporation. So on this slide, you see a short taxonomy of regulatory strategies that we mentioned in the paper. But more substantially, we develop a so-called taxonomy of ESG intermediaries in the paper, where we try to look broader than the EU has to up till this date, because if you look at the different ESG intermediaries that are presented on the slide, obviously some of them are already subject to some sort of sustainable finance regulation in the EU. Not all of them, and even when regulation still exists, or already exists, I'm sorry, there are maybe certain certain fields that could be covered in a more comprehensive way. So substantive a part of this paper, and also I want you to bear in mind that this will be a paper published not only for the European audience that might be a little bit more familiar with some strategies behind regulating these market actors, but this will probably be a paper published in the US. So we are also trying in our recommendations as to how sustainable finance regulation can be leveraged to influence sustainable corporate purpose as it is applied. We're also trying to present some strategies from the EU and think about how they could be inserted in not only the US framework, but generally any regulatory framework that has not yet leverage the potential benefits of sustainable finance regulation. So as I said in the beginning, the paper is still kind of a work in progress. What I wanted to do today is show you like the conceptual skeleton of what we envision here. And I will be happy to take any questions at the end of the session. And if someone has a question or a comment that needs to ripen and would like to ask it at a later point in time, I'm leaving my email address, and I will be also happy to connect sometime after this conference. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Weber. A very interesting presentation. Maybe one unripe remark right now. Well, a bit technical, maybe. I wonder whether how much ECU at all has a competence upon company purpose, because as far as I know, companies are within EU still considered like creatures of national law, and the corporate purpose is something which is in the essence of a company, what a company is. So can you actually, it can regulate companies, but can it influence their purpose? Or if it does it actually infringe upon the rights of the member states to actually regulate, create the companies? But maybe also for a later discussion. Now we'll hear a next presentation by Dusan Jovanovic and Nikola Jovanovic, and it's called Sustainability versus Profitability, or Responsibilities and Remunerations of Management in EU and Slovenian Companies. And maybe this connects, this is a bit similar to the presentation we right heard, because it's, if I understand it correctly, talks about the enforcement actually, because who holds the purse, some in a way enforces the sustainability. So please, I'm looking forward.
Hello to everyone. First of all, do you see our? Can you see our presentation? Just a second. And now you can see. Okay, super. Professor, would you say something on the beginning?
Hello to everyone. If you hear correctly, my voice is not in a good shape, so I will give the floor to my assistant, who will probably do the best to present our main question, which was correctly said by our panel guide. So thank you, Professor Anton Vilic, to give the pre-word of our main question, which is, in our opinion, very interesting and very questionable, and it's somehow on the edge if we compare the profitability, which is the main course of the corporations, and the sustainability, which is not so much profitable because our main statement is sustainability. It's not expensive. It's not so cheap. So it's very expensive. And how compare those two different views? It's actually our main thesis. So please, Nicola.
So as a professor mentioned, and as you can see on the title of our research is sustainability versus profitability and responsibilities and remunerations of management in EU and Slovenian companies. And I will try to be as short as possible so that much time is left for more time is left for the possible discussions. So at the beginning, I will just introduce I will introduce our research that we did for the chapter that we sent the committee, and in general we're researching those topics. So first of all, we split that research into three parts, if I could say like that. First, the most abstract level, and is that fundamental question between sustainability and profitability, and that clash between those key topics in corporate governance today. So on the one side, we have the profitability goal of the profitability nature of the companies. On the other side, we have sustainability goals that we as a society want to reach. So second level of those abstraction of those topics is corporate management role in those sustainability practices, and because corporations as a focal point of economies and management as a focal points of corporations are responsible, but should they bear the burden of sustainability completely alone, or we have some other actors that have to include in this debate. So, and the third part is the potential model that we are created for the connection between on one side remuneration policy as an incentive to the management with the ESG and CSR goals all together to reach that balance that we all want to achieve. So first of all, that conceptual framework. So we started with the key question, like on the most abstract level, like sustainability versus profitability. Sustainability is a goal that we want to achieve in the future as whole society, as a planet, as a whole. But on the other side, we have the profitability nature of the companies, but I will speak about that in the next slide, in the next few slides. So I'll just say the conceptual framework. So we started with that problems in our today's economy, like overconsumption, overproduction of goods and services, and all how that produced the environmental crisis. But key question that we want to ask ourselves is, can capitalism go green? That is the topic that we want to research. So what kind of capitalism can be sustainable? What kind cannot be? That is the one question. And second question is that the professor already mentioned at the beginning, who is going to pay shift towards sustainability? So we want to go to sustainability. That is the at the level of axiom, like the goal that we want to achieve. But way how we're going to do that is much more legal question and much more question to debate. How we will going to, and who will bear the burden of that shift? Like that shift that will happen, that will maybe very painful. We have to understand who will be the bearer of that. So under that conceptual framework, we found the two perspectives. Like one perspective is that the green capitalism is possible and we can achieve it, like with existing and maybe some another tools that are again like carbon trading, bioeconomy, etc. On the other side, we get the scholars that are thinking that green capitalism cannot exist. Those are two strictly different areas. We are not evaluating like from our way of thinking. We just present those two different topics, like how big difference is between those scholars, and that difference is what we want to emphasize. That is the one part of the conceptual framework. Inside of the chapter, we also introduced a little timeline of ESG and CSR as it developed through the time, and especially want to emphasize not right now in the presentation, but in the chapter, those that legal case law that came, especially that Shell case that showed the very different outcomes, and we not today not know what will happen with that in the future. Like that is just the one timeline. After that, the second part of the problem is the purpose of companies. Some speakers already mentioned that, but we from that abstract way of thinking, like for example, in Slovenian Companies Act, we strictly have the defined companies as a profit-making organizations. So if companies are profit-making organizations which have sustainability goals, the biggest pressure will be on the management to reach both goals. But that is the problem for management in one side, and the other side is the very big burden on the management role. And we try to find the solution how to on one side keep that level of responsibility, but on the other side have the strict guidelines how to achieve those goals, and to maybe to dedicate to the other stakeholders in the society. And we will present it in the model. Next thing is the second role of management in corporations. As I said, key focal point of economies are the corporations. On the other side, focal point of corporations are management. Is management, so managerial roles. So we in the second part of the chapter we research what are the management duties and responsibilities for those sustainable practices. What are the challenges? What are the responsibilities that company interest problem that we also research. And third part, it's okay. Third part of our research topic is the remuneration policy as a tool for sustainability. So we try to connect on one side the Institute of Remuneration Policy and its development through the legislation with the ESG and CSR goals, and that will be the key incentive for the management to reach those goals. That incentive will be given from the shareholders. So that splitting a little bit the burden between on one side shareholders, on the other side the management itself. And because I promised to be short, so in Slovenia's potential model, we try to connect the third part and state in which way. So the state will give the incentive with the tax policies to the corporations, so that balance between sustainability and profitability should stay with the tax incentive from the state, and the other side the incentive from the shareholders. Management will have the strict guidelines how to implement those policies without those negative practices, the greenwashing, etc. So that is the just introduction of that model. We also thoroughly written explained in our article. To conclude, key conclusions of our research are: first, abstract level of sustainability versus profitability problem. That is the key problem. Stakeholder versus shareholder capitalism. That is the same debate. Next level is the responsibility of management. Truth of that debate that I mentioned earlier, and the remuneration policy as the possible solution, as a part of solution for that imbalance that's created between sustainability and profitability. That is the key problem that we want to emphasize in our research. And more or less, that's it. Thank you for your attention. I promised that I'll be short so we can debate more. So thank you for your attention once again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jovanovic, for a really short and precise presentation. Yes, very interesting ideas. Also, although I cannot but wonder if shareholders are going to pay for that, and you could argue that it kind of goes against their interests, paying a lot like for public good. Where are they going to be willing to do that, and how to control that? But taxes, I can understand more. Everyone is paying for the public good, but I wonder about the shareholder part. But also maybe for the next discussion. Now we will hear. We have another presentation, of course, by Anatoly Kostruba, and it's about directors and officers liability. about the current trends in EU tort law. So now we are switching from sustainability a little bit more to classical director's duties, if I understand it correctly. So please, Mr. Kostruba, you may begin.
Hello, everyone. Just one remark about my camera, because it was deactivated by organizers. I cannot switch my camera. Could you? Oh, it's okay. Thank you very much. So firstly, let me express my gratitude for possibility to express my thoughts in these reputable events. And thank you very much to great possibility to share with my scientific researchers in the field of corporate law. And of course, I'd like to share some information about legal responsibility of shareholders and chief executive officer, which appears in active activities of the corporates. As you know, the legal personality of legal entity as embodied in the activities of its management bodies, the purpose of which is to strive to achieve the result of business activities and meet other interests of the legal entity, its participants, founders. However, in a process of interaction between the management bodies of legal entities, situation arises when the participants in such interaction pursue different or mutually exclusive goals, which is due to the polar desire to secure corporate interest, which lead to corporate conflicts. Under the conditions of non-transparency of the majority of domestic joint stock companies, their main advantage are implemented through current management and decision-making, largely through shadow scams involving officials of the corporate government's body. Under such circumstances, it's easy to underestimate the profit of even harm of the legal entity. Therefore, for shareholders who has received the appropriate corporate rights but doesn't have a real opportunity not only to influence but also to control management decision, investment are risky. At the turn of 20th, 21st century, the legislation of Eastern European countries has increased the trends toward convergence of the national legal system with the legal system of other countries. An important factor is effective cooperation in the international economic sphere is an effective mechanism for protecting participants of corporate legal relationship, which is achieved by introduction stable global legal practice international legislative sphere. One of those construction of the legal ability of officials of the corporate government's body for the harm caused by their actions in the relevant area. For example, in Ukraine, the regulatory implementation of this legal structure is associated with the sphere of threats to the stability of the banking system, such as the implementation of risky operation by banks and excessive lending to persons associated with the banks. But no more, unfortunately. The study of these inspections required terminology certainty of the concept of corporate governance, which has more economic content than legal. Moving in this direction, it should be recognized that in formula, that the subject of such management is the one who ensures the legal personality of the legal entity, which is revealed in its known features. Consequently, the corporate governance system consists of management bodies of legal entity, which ensure its organizational unity and participation of the legal entity in civil turnover on its own behalf. Such bodies are the supreme management body and corporate rule-making body, general meeting of participants, shareholders, and the executive management body, management board, and directors. This variation in the competence of corporate governance bodies of the legal entity provides for differentiation of the level of legal responsibility of their subjects. Its criterion in the content of the activities of the relevant body in relation to ensuring the legal personality of the legal entity through the implementation of such features at the latest structural unity and participation in civil turnover on its own behalf, which provide the presence of administrative, economical, organizational, and administrative component. From the above scope of legal responsibility includes subject of corporate governments, whose competence include the exercise of the executive power. Those are officials of the executive body of corporate governments of a legal entity. This logic is one form or another is contained in Ukrainian legislation. For example, law of Ukraine or joint stock company, the Article 33, which established the responsibility of officials of joint stock company for losses caused to the company by their actions or inactions. And further, in Article 89 of the Commercial Code of Ukraine, establishing responsibility of officials for damage caused by other than joint stock companies act done with excess or abuse of power, action committed a violation in the procedures of the preliminary approval and other decision-making procedures, and so on. The study aspect of the issue established the general condition of legal responsibility of corporate governance officials. As of today, the doctrinal definition and normative position in the legislation of such conditions are the unity of the subject and objective elements of torts, which, in our opinion, is not justified. The granting of administrative, economical, organizational, administrative power of officials of the corporate governance body of the legal entity to manage it and to property belonging to it forms the fiduciary nature of such relation. Because of fiducia between participants and those relations creates higher risk of abuse. It's correct, in our opinion, to establish legal factors of not only reasonable compensation for injured party, which is the institute of compensation of harm as such, but also to establish the prevention of abuse, other types of malevolent behavior, increase of the legal liability of officials of bodies, corporate legal entity management, by exception, guilt as a condition of responsibility. In this method, the existing disparity in the legal capabilities of participants in the study's trust relationship is balanced, or one of which is the legally weak state. The obligation to compensate the damage that was caused without default has a stimulating effect on such person, mobilize this person to look for and introduce and transfer the new funds contributing to, if not solve, mitigate or reduce the manifestation of that force majeure. In other words, such a duty is related to insufficiently to the consciousness and will of power who caused the harm, so it's a responsibility. Thus, the principle of civil liabilities regards of the fault of the delinquent becomes a reasonable balance in ensuring the interests of legal entity and the implementation of the professional competence of the corporate governance body and the officials. Thus, the basis of professional competence is in officials of the corporate governance body, and of the legal entity is the objective compliance of its actions and decision with the business standards. The level of such competence should allow this person not only to prevent them from committing actions or making decisions that may cause harm, but also to predict the possibility negative consequence of their own professional activities. In turn, to establishing the responsibility of an official regardless of this guilt, only increase the requirements of care and attention that imposed of him. The following conclusions can be sent for the above. Firstly, the significance of the fault of an official of a corporate governance body is leveled by the obligation of necessary level of competence, which not only presupposes the predictability of possible negative consequence of the person's activities in the field of corporate governance, but also require their prejudice. It's obvious that the responsibility of a person for the occurrence of such negative consequence is the result of professional incompetence, that is guilt. Therefore, guilt is a subject attitude of a person to actions that are committed in the field of corporate governance. Their consequences are observed by the possibility of not only prejudice, but also foreseeing possibilities, negative phenomena due to the proper level of professional competence of the persons. It should be noted that the science of financial management has developed methods for managing financial risk, the main importance of which is the function of appropriate mechanisms to minimize their negative consequence, including limited risk concentration, hedging, diversification risk, avoidance risk distribution, and some others. Such characteristics, features of risk as a manifestation of an event assessment of the object phenomena implies the presence of level of management qualification and the ability to predict its occurrence and neutralize the negative consequences associated with the identification, assessment, prevention, and insurance. This is important feature of the activity officials of the corporate governance body of a legal entity, is the awareness of accepting the risk of their activities and managing them. In the above case, on the one hand, protection of rights, interests, and legitimate expectation of parties to corporate legal relationship, including legal entities, increase. And on the other hand, the objectivist threshold standards of integrity of civil servants of a corporate governance requirement of their professional competence increased. Through the principle of innocent objective responsibility of officials of the corporate governance body for harm caused when making the implementation management decision, the rights, interest, and legitimate expectation are filled the real context. And under the above conditions, the reason for the realize of such an official form responsibility is only a case causa, that is a circumstance that the person was not able to foresee by taking appropriate measures of this professional care, which are required of him under specific condition. And the main idea for today in the European Union, European Directive, it's implemented this theoretical aspect in national legislation. As was mentioned before, for example, in Ukraine, we have the such position only in one field of economical interest, in the field of banking sphere, which is more sensitive for economical situation in each country. But I think that this position could be shared and more diverse field of economical activities of the legal entities. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Professor Kostruba, for this enjoyable presentation. And now we will go with our last but not least speaker, Luca Della Tomasina. And he will talk about appraisal right and corporate reorganizations, directors' duties and responsibilities. So we pivot a little bit towards restructuring law, if I remember it correctly, which I really like. It's a very nice legal area. So please, Mr. Della Tomasina, you may start.
Thank you to everyone and the organizer of this wonderful event. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. I'm gonna talk about an ongoing research project. It's a work in progress focusing on shareholders' right to withdraw from an insolvent corporation or limited liability company, but also company in a situation of pre-insolvency, financial crisis, or instability, both during a reorganization proceeding, so compromise or arrangement with creditors in the light of the recently reformed Italian insolvency law. We had a legislative decree number 14 of 2019, also known as Insolvency Code, amended in 2022 and 2024, and before and out of a judicial proceeding, so a compromise or arrangement with creditors. And this is a topic directly involving both the responsibilities of the directors, of the board's members, and more generally, the very sustainability issues. The reason is simple: withdrawal shareholder may impact on financial stability of the company, so on the success of the restructuring program. And that is something regarding workers, customers, the enterprise as a whole, so also sustainability topics, I mean. Now we have to highlight the general legal framework. Until 2022, there has never been a specific rule about the withdrawal rights in a reorganization proceeding in the Italian insolvency statutes. However, several grounds for withdrawal are provided by the ordinary company law in the Italian Civil Code. Most of these provisions do not consider the potential damage to the shareholder's position, to the investment value, or the inherent corporate rights. So the withdrawal exists regardless of prejudice to the investment of shareholder. Their operation also raises issues of consistency with the rules on priorities and distributions of assets under insolvency law. While in some instances, a shareholder's withdrawal from a distressed company may prove to be abusive. In other situations, the exercise of such right may prove useful or even necessary to achieve the restructuring objectives. So we have to distinguish the single situations. In such a framework, a comparison with English, German, American, Spanish, many other insolvency laws could play a strategic role for the development of the evolution of the legislative and judicial debate on the exercise of such rights under Italian law. Such comparative study will help to determine under which conditions the withdrawal should be allowed so as not to conflict with insolvency law priority rules. It should not be forgotten that certain company law rights, such as voting rights, are affected by insolvency rules regulating certain restructuring proceedings, such as concordato preventivo arrangements with creditors in the Italian Insolvency Code. Therefore, it does not seem unreasonable to assume that a similar outcome would affect other corporate rights. So not only voting rights, but also the right we are talking about in this moment, so shareholders' withdrawal rights. In this context, we have a rule governing shareholder right to withdraw from the company in the concordato preventivo, the arrangements with creditors, that is Article 116 before fifth paragraph, now sixth paragraph of the Italian Insolvency Code, providing that shareholders' withdrawal rights shall be not cancelled but suspended until the implementation of the operational transaction giving the right itself. Before, in 2022, it was until the implementation of the restructuring plan in itself. This is a strange provision, especially if we consider that earlier drafts of the Insolvency Code suggested that shareholders' dissenting rights or appraisal rights, so right to withdraw from the company resulting from a corporate merger, division, or conversion, should not have been allowed in a restructuring procedure. In 2022, at the end of the reform process, the removal solution, so to cancel the right, was replaced by a temporary stay, so the suspension solution. Companies undertaking a restructuring process wish to know as soon as possible whether their shareholders wish to stay or leave. Having a well-defined financial and institutional framework is essential to set up a plan to be submitted to the vote of creditors, and now at some conditions provided by the Italian Insolvency Code, shareholders as well, and then to the judicial approval. This is even more crucial under the current framework, which allows creditors and the directors of the insolvent company to impose a plan involving radical changes in the corporate structure, so more dangerous for shareholders than in the past, and more aggressive shareholders. Therefore, that means a broader scope of action for the right to withdraw. The problem arises, I was saying a few minutes ago, since we have a very, very strange regulation in Italy about the right to withdraw from the company. Many corporate transactions and resolutions give dissenting shareholders the right to withdraw. In other European countries, the regulatory framework is quite different. Let's consider France, where such right is not regulating within business companies. For example, Société Anonyme and Société à Responsabilité Limitée. Just in Société Civile, we have the right to withdraw pour juste motif. Let's consider Germany. GmbH Gesetz does not provide for a right to withdraw, and the judges have invented such a right, starting from the Article 61, providing the so-called equitable winding up, so the right single shareholder, the individual shareholder, to ask the judge to put the company, the whole company, into liquidation for a justified ground. So German judges have said, since shareholders have an individual right to bring the whole company to an end, they should have the same right to bring their own investment to an end without consequences on the company in itself. In the UK, the difference is evident. They have the buyout order as a remedy in the case of oppression of minority shareholders by the majority, an unfair prejudice remedy, they say, conducts which may affect the investment of shareholder, but also his or her position into the company. Let's consider a shareholder who is the employee or an employee of the company as well, or a director, a CEO, and he's removed from the employment or the directorship of the delegated powers, but also a legitimate expectation arising from a shareholders' agreement. In any case, the ground is a justified ground, so an unfair prejudice to a legitimate expectation of the shareholder. The problem is that in Italian limited liability company, special limited liability company, a merger, a division, an increase in legal capital without preemption rights give shareholders the appraisal right. In a corporation, so Società per Azioni, every amendment of the charter's provisions regarding corporate rights is ground for appraisal. Some scholars postulate transactions, or in any case, resolutions affecting directly the corporate rights or affecting the right to vote and the right to dividends distribution, no other corporate rights, or a prejudicial impact on those rights. But these are arguments, just arguments, controversial arguments to restrict a legal provision whose boundaries are fluid and uncertain. It remains the fact that in Italy we have a regulation of the right to withdraw that makes it a real bomb for the company's stability. And what we are talking about are transactions or amendments that could prove to be strategic, so essential, not negotiable for the surviving of the company, and especially for the realization of the rescue program in the interests on behalf of workers, customers, creditors, above all, so the enterprise as a whole. First of all, we have to clear field from two possible remarks or objections. First one, from the one side, it will be argued that the director is entrapped in some sort of strange loop. So I am trying to solve the financial problems of the company, but it is so difficult. Shareholders threat their appraisal rights, so I will file for liquidation. I'll have problems in this way. Nobody will tell me that I lost time, that I tried something desperate. If I lose time and the rescue proceeding does not fit into the goals, it will be my fault and I will compensate creditors. So liquidation, I will file for liquidation. Actually, this would not be the right way, or in any case, not the only way. By exercising his power to decide for restructuring, the director benefits from the safe harbor granted by the so-called business judgment rule, and this applies also to the decision on which tool to use for the restructuring purposes. Not the judicial tool, a scheme of arrangement or restructuring plan, so concordato preventivo, which are judicial tools. BJR, in fact, protects the directors of companies that have not achieved their business goals, including goals regarding restructuring aims, if they have made business decisions correctly and diligently via rational and cautious measures. requirements to be met in order to be protected by the so-called business judgment rule are well known. They have acted in good faith, in the honest belief that the decision made was reasonable and in the best interest of the company. They have no conflict of interests, so they are favoring the company's interest over their own interest or the interests of related persons. They have acted on an informed basis. This is important. They have been provided with all the necessary information to make a reasonable decision. So external reports and other information, and other sources of information. They have followed an adequate decision-making process according to internal applicable rules and regulations to ensure the right adoption, the correct adoption of the corresponding business decision. Second possible remark, from the other side, it could be argued that when the company is insolvent or likely to be insolvent, shareholders evidently no longer count for anything. The owners of the enterprise, it could be said, are its creditors, and therefore the result is the following. You, director, manage the company and the residual liquidity on behalf of creditors and nobody else. All the corporate rights, including withdrawal, are suspended or cancelled. Or in any case, manager, you have the power to block them, to suspend them. It is quite more complicated, actually. Creditors' interests become more important in this context. That's true, but shareholders remain the agents. They are not cancelled by the insolvency or pre-insolvency. For example, under the Delaware corporate law, even when a solvent corporation is navigating in the zone of insolvency, the focus for Delaware directors does not change. Directors must continue to discharge their fiduciary duties to the corporation and its shareholders by exercising the business judgment in the best interests of the corporation for the benefits of its shareholders as well. And the same applies to Italian regulatory framework. So creditors' interests become more important in this context, but they are not the only interests on which behalf directors have to manage the company. The very issue of my presentation, how to protect the company from the negative effects of the right to withdraw. Particularly negative in the Italian corporate law legal framework for the reasons I highlighted. I can see three ways, not alternative, I mean, but joint. First way, the liquidity test. In many jurisdictions, they have a liquidity test, so a solvency test, not only a balance sheet test, but also a solvency or liquidity test when the company is going to distribute its asset to its shareholders. For instance, a reduction in subscribed legal capital, but also the purchase of own shares by the company, transactions traceable to the so-called financial assistance, or the payment of shares. This is a point, the payment of shares to one or more shareholders who have exercised their right to withdraw. In Italy, we have the balance sheet test for these transactions, not a liquidity or solvency test. We have solvency test just for the reimbursement of loans given by shareholders to the company in a situation where the company would need a consideration, not a loan. In this case, we have to think about maybe this is a first way to protect the company from the negative impacts of shareholders' right to withdraw. We could think about the opportunity to extend the scope of action of the rule governing this liquidity or solvency test for reimbursement of shareholders' loans, so the Article 2467 of the Italian Civil Code, to extract from it a general principle imposing a solvency test also for any corporate asset distributions to shareholders. I mean, like the distribution of assets to shareholders or more shareholders who have exercised their right to withdraw from the company. Second way. The second way is to enter a so-called composizione negoziata della crisi. There is a new tool for pursuing rescue objectives. There is a tool to identify the tool. So a tool to identify the best tool for the rescue based on the role of an expert appointed by the local business chamber, commerce chambers. And maybe the solution is to ask within this proceeding, composizione negoziata della crisi, to ask for protective measures against shareholders so as to block their appraisal right during the time of the proceeding. I understand, I see that it is not simple. Protective measures regard creditors, and here we have a shareholder who has not become a creditor. He would become a creditor if he exercised the right to withdraw, then 90 days without the company removing the resolution of the transaction, and now, but not before we have a credit, a normal credit, like the credit for the payment of the price in a sale contract, I mean. So we have to deepen, to explore this new opportunity with reference to subjects, shareholders, other than creditors, but entitled to exercise powers, the right to withdraw in the case of shareholders, a foreclosure in the case of creditors that are able to have harmful consequences on the restructuring purposes. And then the third way. The third way passes through information to shareholders. So to give shareholders all the necessary information so as they may understand the situation, and if they still decide to exercise the right to withdraw, notwithstanding the potential dangers for creditors, for a restructuring program, they could be assumed to be responsible, so liable for any damage. Everybody know that all the European legal frameworks have today remedies against shareholders, not only directors, but also shareholders, exercising their corporate rights unfairly. So I have to completely inform them. If I am the director of the company, I have to completely inform them. So as I can say tomorrow, you were totally aware of what you were doing and of the inner consequences for the financial stability of the company and the rescue proceeding. This is maybe a third way to protect the company from the negative effects of shareholders' right to withdraw. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Della Tomasina. Very, very interesting. I wonder also maybe transaction avoidance rules could come into play sometimes, because all those payments made in the vicinity of insolvency, well, they could sometimes be used. Of course, there are certain prerequisites, but this is what comes to mind. But never mind me. Now comes the most fun part of this session, I hope, your questions. So I'm sure you've been very attentive, and I would love to hear your questions. You may raise hands or simply start speaking, and I will give you a word. I'm not sure how it works via Zoom, to be honest, but please. Don't be shy. And don't pretend that you didn't listen to all those wonderful presentations. Please. Do I have... So we have 58 participants. Whoa, that's a lot. Is anyone applying for... I mean, I have so many questions, but I've spoken too much, and it would be kind of inappropriate of me to usurp more of the attention.
Anton, I think it is not inappropriate from you. It is also then inappropriate from me. But if you allow me, I would just like to ask Anna-Marie. I really enjoyed your presentation, but it came to my mind, would you agree that the problems that you have showed on your slides, information asymmetry, misaligned incentives, procedural barriers, unclear directors' duties, aren't those problems the problems that we are facing, I would say, constantly in company law and in European company law and in corporate governance? It came to my mind, for example, I like it very much that you have underlined that everything is on shareholders. So it came to my mind, we had amendments of shareholder directives. If you remember reading articles in, let's say, 2013-14, it was the question above all questions, are the shareholders absentee landlords? That was the phrase I really liked. So we had amendments of shareholder directives, and I wouldn't say that much happened. So now we have went towards the stakeholders, because it is a question of sustainability. And of course, it is a question primarily when people are thinking about it, the question about the environmental issues. But if we look, for example, at the moment at ESG, it is not environmental, it is social and it is governance. So in this buzzword ESG, we again have G world. So governance, directors, who is governing the companies. So I don't know, we have, KPIs, a number of instruments trying to get directors, to hold the directors liable. But still in the National Companies Acts, we have precisely defined and regulated what are directors' duties. So isn't it maybe one way of trying to, from the stakeholder push, to pressure the shareholders and then to find out how to make the directors liable? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think you have exactly grasped like the center of the problem we're trying to deal here with. I would agree that part of the problems with enforcement of a so-called sustainable corporate purpose, these are problems that also that are with us for a long time, that have also appeared in other contexts, right? So there have been studies from the late 90s, early 2000s about how the enforcement of directors' duties, both in the US and the EU, it just, doesn't work. Then we had the whole wave of empowering shareholders, which again, when the financial crisis arrived, the legislators stepped back from empowering shareholders because it turned out that aligning too much of shareholder interests with what management is supposed to do also leads to short-term strategies and so on. So I think there are multiple old and new problems in trying to use a company law as a tool to influence the outcomes, the decision-making outcomes. So I think that there are still some entryways in which we could think about reforming corporate governance to make this work a little bit better. I mean, some of the pathways would be how to empower shareholders to enforce directors' duties, but this is a huge Pandora's box, because there are obviously, if you raise this question, everyone will say, oh no, now the companies will get sued by these NGOs. You cannot let everyone sue, right? You have to have some rules in place. So this is a very valid discussion, and I'm actually also working on this in a separate project, in my book project. But what we are trying to do with this paper is just to say, look, there are several issues that are problematic with using company law. These are the problems we see. So maybe let's look at the ultimate goal that we have here. That is, we want to influence directors to make sustainable decisions. And this is what we term applied corporate purpose. And let's look how other branches of law, the neighboring fields, could directly influence this. And here we just, have this collection of regulatory strategies in sustainable finance. And we think about, for example, how are directors reacting, or how do they have to accommodate the fact that rating agencies will award the company a certain kind of rating. So if we have a regulation of the rating agency that subjects the rating agency to certain rules and also perhaps to some extent to responsibilities and sanctions on their behalf, we have this indirect, let's say, channel of influencing corporate behavior, because we have these ESG intermediaries, we call them that way. They are themselves the addressees of the regulation. They have some incentives to comply with that regulation, obviously, and they have a certain relationship to the company. It may be the relationship of providing a rating, of providing capital, the institutional investors. So there is this ecosystem of relationships among the market actors. Of course, if we talk about big companies that are on the financial market itself, because small and medium enterprises is a whole different topic. So we are in this, and this is a little bit along the ways of Alessio's inquiry from yesterday. So our point of departure is, look, company law, at this point, we have seen, in particular at the European level, it is difficult to intervene in a regulatory way. And we also see enforcement problems if our intervention would be very just precise, just to, for example, how the French did, redefine the corporate purpose. This probably wouldn't work. So let's look at other tools of regulation that could maybe lead us to this ultimate end goal that we envision. So this is the conceptual framework. And sorry for taking so much time to
thank you very much. It was really interesting to listen to you. Well, it really makes sense, and it is a idea that would help. I see that Anton is looking and carefully listening, because we had almost a year ago a very hot discussion regarding the corporate purpose. You remember, in Rijeka, and also 2 years ago here at this conference. So corporate purpose is ongoing debate, I would say, and seen from different perspectives. Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. I'm looking to forward to read your paper, and for the separate project, the book. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, it is true. Somehow corporate purpose always befalls me. This is my destiny. But this is a very nice topic, because it really reflects still many ideas what people think companies should be. So not only strictly technical legal norms, but also some value-based approach, like what should we expect from our companies. But I would also like to hear from other people asking questions. So please, maybe this will ignite a discussion.
I think Jelena is holding her hand. Jelena Lepetic.
Yes,
she raised her hand.
Maybe a more general question. How can I see who is raising hand? Of course, Jelena, please. Okay, so first a remark, since I'm obviously quite technically incompetent to see your hands, I really apologize if I don't see them. So just be unpolite and start speaking. So Jelena, I presume you are waiting. Please.
Yes, Thank you. I have one question for Luca Della Tomasina. I was really impressed by your presentation because I am interested in appraisal rights. And my question would be, what is the relevant period when we should limit the appraisal rights? So because you said, and I agree completely, that it is upon the directors to choose, for example, which reorganization measures they should take, the company should take if the company is insolvent. But I'm really not sure when the period when you should limit the appraisal rights should start and when should it end. Because you can have, for example, in between the insolvency proceedings, before the reorganization is approved. So I think that this is a major problem, but I really like the topic. I didn't even think about it. And also because this is, of course, related to minority shareholders. So whether some percentage of shareholdings would impact if it is really low. So should there be any other conditions regarding the limited period of time when you should limit these rights, and whether there should be any other conditions to limit these rights of shareholders? Thank you.
Sorry, Luca, you're muted, so.
Sorry. Thank you, Elena, for this interesting question. We in Italy have rules governing shareholders' right to withdraw from the solvent company or pre-solvent company just in a concordato preventivo, so a judicial proceeding for the composition of crisis or insolvency, some sort of arrangement with creditors. And the rule is that Article 116 of the Italian Insolvency Code, providing that the right to withdraw is suspended until the implementation of the transaction or resolution or operation giving the right to withdraw. So, for example, in a SRL, a limited liability company, a merger, a division, an increase in legal capital without the right of preemption, so excluding or limiting the preemption right, or in a corporation, so società per azioni, an amendment of charter's provisions regarding corporate rights, such as the right to vote or other rights, depending on the interpretation of the single scholars. So in this case, we have a rule, we have a written rule. So rule raising many problems. For example, the problem of the moment of exercising the right, because which is the meaning of the rule suspending the right, which is the object of suspension rule, the right to withdraw or the right to be paid by the company. It's not the same, because if I am forced to withdraw, to say what I have to do within the corporate proceeding, the consequences, financial consequences of the withdrawal are provided by the plan, the restructuring plan. So creditors are gonna vote in favor or against the plan, providing that intention, that we're willing to withdraw from the company by shareholders, by one shareholder or more shareholders. But we have a rule, a written rule. Out of a concordato preventivo, out of an arrangement with creditors, so before the moment in which directors go into a judicial proceeding for the composition of insolvency crisis with the creditors, we have no rules. And I'm trying to envisage some solutions to imposing some limitations, some restrictions to the right of shareholders to withdraw from the company. This is a point. We don't have any rules, any specific rules governing the problem of shareholders' right to withdraw from insolvent or pre-insolvent corporations or companies before a concordato preventivo. So I was trying to envisage the opportunity or the need to implement a liquidity test, solvency test, but we have the solvency test just for the reimbursement of loans. That is another thing. Another hypothesis was composizione negoziata della crisi, which is not a judicial proceeding. It's some sort of administrative proceeding to find a solution, a tool for the composition of the solvency or pre-insolvency crisis of the company, in which the debtor, so the company, has the power to ask to a judge for protective measures, that is the suspension of foreclosures by creditors, but we are not dealing with a creditor, but with a shareholder exercising his right to withdraw from the company. The right will become a credit in a strict sense when 90 days pass without the company removing the resolution or transaction giving the right to withdraw from the company. So I was envisaging the opportunity to extend the protective measures provided by the law in composizione negoziata della crisi against the creditors and against the foreclosures to another field, so against shareholders and against their right to withdraw from the company. And the third solution was information. Information, a complete information to shareholders in order to have the opportunity tomorrow to exercise a claim, a compensation claim against shareholders who have exercised the right to withdraw in a so delicate moment of the life of the company, like the restructuring moment, without a concordato preventivo. Because if we are in a concordato preventivo, we have the rule, so the right is suspended, raising many problems, but the right is suspended.
Thank you, Professor Della Tomasina. So we do not have that much time, but still we have. So maybe one or two more questions would be nice before we take a break. And I reiterate, please speak freely if you have a question. So maybe I have a question, although a bit of a complex question and not suited for to be one of the last questions. Maybe for some of the speakers from first three sessions which dealt with sustainability more. So I see this whole sustainability oriented movement also. I also believe it has this political background. So it is also a very progressive movement. And aren't the geopolitical winds blowing now in a different direction? And I'm not talking, of course, only about the US elections, but also a situation in Europe. As far as we can discern, we are sailing towards a more protectionist world. Will there be a part for sustainability in such world? Could it be possible that this will be very soon an outdated concept? That we are talking about it now, but maybe in 5 or 10 years, maybe we'll look at it and wonder what we talk about. I'm not claiming this is good or bad, but is this a possibility? Do we fear it? I don't have a specific speaker to ask that question, but anyone might take it.
I can take it if no one volunteers.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, I think that you're absolutely right that, and this is the whole complexity about the sustainability discussion, that Obviously, it is to some extent grounded in the natural sciences, right? And what we know about the limits of our planet and so on. But the degree in which we think that these scientific findings from the natural science should translate into law, we of course arrive at a political a question and a question of priorities. So I think that definitely the current political landscape, obviously in the US, that is probably going to exit the Paris Agreement for a second time. And also in the European Union is not that much leaning towards these issues as we would probably have seen it like 2 or 3 years ago. I think in the European Union, the general commitment to these issues will remain, although von der Leyen just announced, we shortly mentioned this yesterday, some ideas on how to alleviate the regulatory burden that is associated with sustainability, and the proposal to merge the taxonomy, the CSRD and the CSDDD into one legal act. And maybe there is some visible, let's say, curbing down on the ambitions. But I mean, for sure, the European Union is going to stay a party to the Paris Agreement, which, of course, again, only relates to climate, and sustainability is much broader in its material scope than only issues of climate. But I would I would suspect that the EU stays more or less on the same course. There is, again, the question of priorities and how high on that agenda the sustainability priorities will still be featured. But I guess that there's not a drastic turnaround to be expected at the EU level. And I think the reason for that is also the what we call the democratic deficit in governing the EU, because as we see these electoral backlashes in the US or in certain European countries, that there is a change of government and a very radical change of policy, these things do not happen that drastically on the EU level, because we also do not have that very strong connection of what we call government in the EU and what the people expect. So this democratic breakage between election and executing power and legislation is just much more fragile. So I wouldn't expect like a big turnaround in the EU. But still, I think that the pace of legislating in that area is going to be a little bit slower. And in particular, this is also, again, something I've mentioned during my presentation. I think that in particular in the area of private law and company law, I think major changes will be a struggle during the next years. And this is why I think it's important, and we've also heard several presentations on this yesterday, it is important to explore like alternative avenues, and also important for the member states not to just look at the European legislator, but maybe think about some regulatory pathways themselves.
Thank you very much, Professor Weber. This sounds very plausible. I could say that I agree as far as I follow the discussion. Thank you very much. So now we are really near the end of the, just a moment, where is it? Yeah, we are near the end, but still there is some time for questions. Maybe something what you've heard has sparked your interests and you would like to comment or ask. or if not, well, we are not going to force you. We are quite a liberal panel. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for your attention. Special thanks to the speakers. It was really very enjoyable. Thank you very much to the organizers who invited us all, and have a happy and lucky continuation of this conference.
Thank you very much, Anton, for moderating this session. Thank you all panelists. It was really, it was extremely interesting. Thank you very much. Now it is a break, half an hour, and we are starting again at 11:30. So thank you very much, and see you in half an hour. Bye-bye.